The previous day, Sayadaw was explaining on Samadhi, and yesterday, Sayadaw explained on Jhana Samadhi in about medium length. And today, Sayadaw will explain on Vipassana Samadhi. And Sayadaw had explained that Jhana is observing closely with concentrated mind. So observing closely, concentrating very closely on the object of meditation is called Jhana. So one should observe on the object of meditation very closely, very completely, and it is called Jhana. And Sayadaw explained that there are two kinds of jhana. Aramanupa jhana, which is samatha jhana, and Lakhanupa jhana, and Vipassana is part of Lakhanupa jhana. And Sayadaw had explained on Aramanupa jhana or samatha jhana. And Sayadaw explained that by practicing Aramanupa jhana or Samatha jhana, one can be reborn in the existence that has a very long lifespan. And Sayadaw explained why the Brahmas have a very long lifespan, explaining with the worldly example. There is still a lot left to be explained, but because there is not only Lokiya jhana, there is not only mundane kind of jhana, Sayadaw will not explain on this mundane kind of jhana in detail. What is more important is Lakhanupa jhana, and Vipassana Samadhi is part of Lakhanupa jhana. So today, Sayadaw will explain on Vipassana Samadhi. So the previous days, Sayadaw explained that there are three paths: the Kamma path, Jhana path, and Vimutti path. So Vimutti path can also be called Jnana path. And these three paths diverge from the junction of Kammasakata Samadhi. And today, Sayadaw will explain on Vimutti path, which is also called Jnana path. So, in order to be free from the bondage or captivity of kilesa defilements, practicing sila alone is not enough. By practicing sila, one can overcome the transgressive form of defilements. So by observing sila, one can overcome transgression and misconduct. One can struggle out of transgression and misconduct by observing morality. But in order to overcome the mental misconduct and to overcome the latent or dormant form of defilements, sila alone is not enough. And the defilements that can arise in the mind, the defilements that manifest in the mind, which are called priyuttana kilesa, obsessive form of kilesa, are overcome by samadhi khanda. They are overcome by group of samadhi or concentration group. So with samadhi khanda or with samatha, one can tranquil and suppress the priyuttana kilesa, obsessive form of defilement. But this samatha cannot uproot the defilement because it does not contain, it does not have jhana as prominent factor. Even though it has jhana, this jhana is not has the capacity to uproot the defilement. So what can uproot the defilements is Vipassana jhana, insight knowledge, and Magga jhana, path knowledge. By gaining Vipassana jhana, insight knowledge, one can overcome kilesa defilements momentarily. And by attaining Magga jhana, path knowledge, one can uproot the defilements to the point of no return. So by gaining Vipassana jhana, one can overcome the defilements momentarily, and when the Vipassana jhana matures stage by stage, and finally when the person attains Magga jhana, path knowledge, one can uproot and eradicate these defilements. So with Vimekka Samadhi, one can uproot or eradicate the defilement. By becoming a Sotapanna, one can overcome Sakkaya Ditthi, the personality view, Ditthi wrong view, and Vicikicca, skeptical doubt. And also, by becoming a Sotapanna, one can overcome the apaya relating defilements, lobha, dosa, greed, anger, that can lead the person to be reborn in the lower existences, are totally uprooted by becoming a Sotapanna. So the object of Vipassana jhana is nama rupa, mind and matter. So the nama rupa, mind and matter is the object of Vipassana jhana. The whole body from head to toe, from toe to head, is a field of object of meditation. And in the body, the nama rupa are arising as cause and effect, moment by moment. They arise and pass away. So these nama rupa are object of meditation. And there are instances when nama is the cause and rupa is the effect. And there are also instances when nama is the cause and rupa is the effect. At the moment of seeing, when the manasikara or attention is directed towards the seeing, one will come to know the seeing consciousness. So in this case, the manasikara, nama is the cause, and seeing consciousness is the nama, which is the effect. Another example where rupa, materiality, is the cause and nama, mentality, is the effect. In the case of hearing, there is the striker element, which is the sound waves, and the receptor element, which is the ear base, and the hearing consciousness, which is ignition. So, because there is ear, which is the receptor, then hearing consciousness can take place. If even though one has ear, but if the hearing is not good, if the ear base is not good, then one cannot hear properly. And also, even though one has ears, but if there are no sound to be heard, then there will be no hearing consciousness. So in the case of hearing, the receptor, which is the ear, and the striker, which is the sound wave, they are the cause, which are materiality. So because of these two, the receptor and the striker, being the ear and the sound wave, these are the cause which lead to hearing consciousness, which is Dhamma. So in this case, the materiality is the cause, and hearing consciousness is the effect, which is mentality. And in the example where Rupa is the cause and Rupa is the effect, when the weather is cold, then there will be series of materiality reacting to this cold. And when the weather is hot, the materiality in the body, there will be a series of materiality as a cause, as an effect of this heat. And also, when one is hungry, the materiality will become withered, will not have any strength. And when the person gets to take food, the materiality will become fresh and alert again. So this is the case where the Rupa is the cause and the Rupa being the effect. In the body, when there are bad contact or bad touch, there will be discomfort, and it is also another case of Rupa being the cause and Rupa being effect. So these Nama Rupa are arising as cause and effect continuously. So in the whole body, there are Nama Rupa arising, and the whole body is the field of objects. So within the field of object also, there are objects which are arising at the present moment. And these objects which are arising at the present moment is the object of Vipassana Jhana. So one should note on these objects that are presently arising. One should note with effort so that these objects will be noted. So Jhana is observing very closely, concentrating very closely on the object is called Jhana. And in the Jhana, there are factors involved in the Jhana, and Sayadaw will explain on these jhanic factors. So the whole body is a field of objects, and within the whole body there are part of the body are also objects which are arising moment after moment. So in the whole body, which is a field of objects, there are objects which are arising bit by bit. There is seeing object, hearing object, smelling, tasting, touching. So these objects of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching are arising one after another. New and new objects are arising. So these objects have to be observed and noted. These objects have to be concentrated and noted. So at the beginning of the practice, yogi cannot note every seeing or hearing yet. They cannot cope with these new and new objects. So for the yogis who are just beginners, they need to start from simple and few objects. So when the person breathes, the air goes through the nostrils, and because of the intention to breathe, the breathing takes place. So breathing is taking place all the time, continuously, one after another. So when there is breathing, inhaling and exhaling, the air goes through the nostrils and the abdomen rises and falls. So as long as there is breathing, there will be rising and falling of the abdomen. So this rising and falling of the abdomen is the primary object of meditation. When one begins to practice Vipassana, the object of meditation should be simple and few. And this rising, falling meets this category of simple and few. Sayadaw gives an example. A student who goes to school, who is a beginner student, a KG student. This KG student, kindergarten student, should be learning lessons which are simple and few. So as a kindergarten student, even though there are few lessons, if the lessons are difficult, then the student cannot cope. Even though the lessons are simple, but if there are a lot of lessons, then the student cannot finish all. So the student should have lessons which are simple and few. In the same way, when the yogi practices as a beginner yogi, the object of meditation should be simple and few. That's why yogis are asked to note the rising and falling of the abdomen as the primary object. And even though when the yogi becomes skilled in the object, when the yogi becomes skilled in noting, yogi should note the rising and falling of the abdomen as the primary object. But when other objects arises, such as seeing, hearing, then the yogi should go on to note the new object, such as seeing, hearing, and then come back to rising, falling. So when there are no other objects, then the yogi should be noting rising and falling of the abdomen, so that the mind will not be, the mind has some work to do. If there is no work for the mind, then it will not do. That's why the noting mind always must have something to note. So that's why yogi should be noting rising and falling of the abdomen as the object of meditation. So the yogi must be noting rising and falling of the abdomen as the primary object. Sayadaw gives an example of a spider and a cobweb. A spider lives in a cobweb, and when the spider sees some insect, spider will go and catch the insect and eat, and always come back to the center of the cobweb. And again, when the spider gets another insect to eat, the spider will go after the insect, eat, and then always come back to the center of the cobweb. In the same way, yogi should note, just like in the example of spider and cobweb, the yogi's mind should always be tied onto the object. So, the yogi should be noting rising, falling of the abdomen as the primary object. And if there are new objects, yogi should note the new object and then always come back to the rising, falling of the abdomen, which is the primary object, so that the mind would be occupied with noting objects, whatever object that arises. So, some of the yogis, they ask, why do I have to start with rising and falling of the abdomen? Why do I have to do my report starting from rising and falling of the abdomen? So they frequently ask this kind of question. And what Sayadaw explained just now answers what the yogi frequently asks about rising and falling. So the whole body, in the whole body, which is the field of objects, there will be new and new objects arising one after another. So in sitting meditation, if there are no other objects, yogi has to be noting rising and falling of the abdomen when there are no other objects. And during walking meditation, yogi should be noting lifting, moving, and placing of the foot. So yogi should be concentrating on the foot and noting every single step of lifting, moving, and placing. So some of the yogis criticize, I have to be noting rising, falling all the time. Every day it's rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing. What special experience am I going to get just noting rising, falling over and over again? So they are having doubt, criticizing. But if you look in a casual manner, it is the same rising, falling. It is the same lifting, moving, placing. But if the more you concentrate on it, the way you come to see rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing will be different. So Sayadaw gives an example. There is a sentence. If you just scan it and read without paying much attention, then you don't even understand what it's trying to say. If you read again the sentence, then you have a rough idea of the sentence. If you read a third time, you understand better. If you read a fourth time, you understand more. So if you read over and over again, then the understanding of the sentence will be different. Even though it is the same sentence, you will come to understand more deeply, more precisely, in depth if you read it with full attention over and over again. So if you just merely read it without paying much attention, you do not get the meaning. So in the sentence, there are nouns, verbs, and also there are adjectives and adverbs. Each and every word has its own meaning. And if you don't pay attention, then if one does not pay attention, one will not know the meaning of each and every word. If one does not know the meaning of each and every word, then one does not know the meaning of the whole sentence. That's why, just as one needs to pay full attention when reading a sentence, one should pay attention to each and every word so as to understand the whole sentence. In the same way, one has to pay attention to the rising and falling of the abdomen every time one knows. Even though it is the same sentence, the way you understand depends on the way you read. The more you pay attention, the more you will understand the sentence clearly, in depth. So, in the practice also, even though it is the same rising, falling, it is the same lifting, moving, placing, the understanding and the knowledge you get from rising, falling will differ according to how you observe, how you note. So, Sayadaw gives an example. There is something to see. If your eye is not good, one cannot see properly. For example, there is a row of termites. If you see from a distance, if you look from a distance, you will just see as a line. And the one will not be sure whether it's a line, whether it's a stick, or whether it's a rope if one looks from a distance. If the person goes closer, then she will see things moving. And if the person goes even closer, then the person will see 2 and 3 ants going together, group after group. And if the person takes a look very closely, then the person will see each and individual termite moving. So the row of termites doesn't change. The termites are moving and the row of termites doesn't change. But what changes is the manner and the distance the person takes a look. So what the person sees, how the person sees, depends on the way she looks, and it also depends on the distance that the person is looking. So when the person takes a look at the row of termites from a very close place, then the person sees each and individual termite one by one very distinctly. So in the same way, even though it is the same rising, falling, even though it seems to be the same lifting, moving, placing, the knowledge you get, the way you see, depends on how you observe, how closely you observe. So even though it seems to be the same object, the more you pay attention, the more you look closely, the more you observe closely, you will see the rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing very distinctly in a very clear-cut manner. So that's why these objects have to be noted very carefully, respectfully, and meticulously and thoroughly. That's why in Vipassana it is said that it should be Anupasana. One should observe the object repeatedly over and over again so that she will know the object distinctly in a very clear-cut manner. And one should observe very closely and concentrate on it and observe very closely, and it will be Jhana. Even though it is the same object, the way you understand it will differ according to how you observe it. So you will come to see in a very distinct, clear-cut manner if you observe carefully, closely, meticulously, thoroughly, and if you pay full attention. So in the body, there are nama and rupa arising as cause and effect, and if one does not observe, one will not see. Even though one observes, if one does not put sufficient effort, then one will not see. So if one does not observe these nama rupa, what she comes to know will only be from imagination. And the knowledge one gets from imagination is not sure. So some people who are thinking, daydreaming, they think what they know is right. But in fact, what they know from thinking, daydreaming, imagining is not right. So their answers will not be sure if they know from imagination. So by observing on the object, what she comes to know will be true. So there will be no doubt about these things. So in order to know these nama rupa, which are arising as cause and effect, one needs to observe them at the moment of arising. So at the moment of arising, one should note, aiming the mind towards the object, and one should put effort so that the object will be noted. One can only observe the objects that are arising new and new. So if the thing is not arising new, then one cannot observe on them. So it should be freshly new arising object. So whenever there is freshly new arising object, such as rising and falling of the abdomen, yogi should note with aiming and effort. Aiming, directing the mind towards the object, it is called vitakka, and it is one of the jhanic factor. Even though viriya, effort, is not a jhanic factor, but this viriya supports the jhana. So by putting effort, the noting mind will get to the object of meditation. So in order to note the object, one should aim and direct the mind towards the object and put effort so that the mind will fall on the object. So if the yogi notes with aim and effort, the noting mind will reach the object. The noting mind will become direct or face-to-face with the object, and the noting mind will as if touch or come into contact with the object. So when the noting mind gets to the object as if rubbing onto the object, this rubbing onto the object is also another jhanic factor. So one should be noting in such a way that these factors will be present every single second. So the rising, falling, that is connected with the in-breathing and out-breathing. Even though it is called rising, falling, but the nature of this rising, falling is stiffness, tension, movement, warmth, heat, cold, and so on. So this rising, falling is based on Vayoputapa. The contact is mainly on the contact of this wind element. And when the yogi is noting on the rising, falling of the abdomen, when the noting mind falls on stiffness, yogi comes to know the stiffness. When the noting mind falls onto tension, then the yogi comes to know tension. So in order to be able to note on the object, yogi should aim the mind towards the object, which is one of the jhanic factors. And the yogi needs to put effort so that the noting mind will get to the object of meditation. And when noting, yogi should have courage in order to note the presently arising object. By noting with aim and effort, the noting mind will hit the target of meditation, and the noting mind will as if rub onto the object, which is another jhanic factor. So each and every factor has its own quality, which is very precious. So in order to note the presently arising object, yogi needs to aim the mind towards the object. So this aiming, vitaka, is not letting kilesa from arising. So at the moment when the yogi is aiming his or her mind towards the object, there will be no wrongful thoughts such as thinking about sensual desire. There will not be thinking on the sensual, there will not be any sensual thoughts. And when the noting mind is aimed or direct towards the object, there will be no sensual thought, no thoughts about wanting to torture others. Because there is aiming the mind towards the object, these wrongful thoughts has no chance to arise. And by putting effort so that the noting mind will get to the object of meditation, when this effort is present, then the path of defilements will be blocked. If there is lack of mindfulness, the path of defilements will be open. And when the yogi notes with effort, these defilements have no chance to arise. Having effort present, the path of defilements will be blocked. And when the noting mind falls on the rising, falling, the person comes to know the nature such as stiffness, tension, and so on. So he, she will be certain about the object. There will be no uncertainty, but the yogi is certain because he, she is able to note on the object. So that's why each and every factor has its own quality. So the yogi should be noting in such a way that these factors, each and every factor, will have its own quality. So aiming and directing the mind towards the object, it is one of the jhanic factor, which is called vitaka. Putting effort, it is not jhanic factor, but it supports the jhana so that sati, samadhi, mindfulness and concentration will develop. And this samadhi concentration is also one of the jhanic factors. When the noting mind hits the object of meditation, there will be no uncertainty, but there will be certain of the object. And each of these factors has its own quality. Accumulating these jhanic factors, making these jhanic factors to arise is called upadana, making them to arise. And one should repeatedly be developing these jhanic factors. So in Pali it is called vadana, increasing or making many of these jhanic factors, and it is called bhavana, so that the mind will become from small to big, from tender to ripe. So if the yogi is able to note this way for 1 minute, there will be 60 moments where she has these jhanic factors, such as vitakka, aiming, directing. So when this vitakka, aiming, is present, there will not be wrongful thoughts. So in this way, wrongful thoughts will be overcome when there is vitakka, aiming, directing the mind towards the object. And when viriya is present, when viriya effort is present, the path to unwholesomeness, the path to kilesa defilements will be blocked. When the noting mind hits the object of meditation, and when the noting mind is rubbing against the object, it is also one of the jhanic factors. And tomorrow, Sayadaw will explain more on these jhanic factors. Imaya Dhamma nu Dhamma